We're going to record this so that we can share it with colleagues who were not able to join this masterclass. My name is Kerry Brink. I'm from WWF Netherlands, and I'm hosting this masterclass together with colleagues from European Rivers Network and from World Fish Migration Foundation. We have Fivos Mochlianatis, we have Corinne Rono and Adela Verdet from that will be helping with the question and answers sessions and also making sure that everything flows smoothly. We also welcome as the special guest today, Stéphane Weil, who will talk to us about his experiences with dam removal. On the agenda, we will start with Stéphane's presentation. Will be about 25 minutes. We will then hopefully have a nice discussion. He is an expert, so this is your opportunity. If you have questions about dam removal, if you're new to dam removal, if you're experienced, please ask questions. This is the moment. We will open the floor for you to be able to chat. And also, if you prefer not to ask a question in person, please also in the chat you can write text, and then we will ask those questions to Stéphane on your behalf. And then I will round up with what we are doing with Dam Removal Europe Help Desk, what that entails, and also Open Rivers Program. We are celebrating the call that will be opening soon for Open Rivers Program. Funding opportunities on dam removal. And so I will also talk to you a little bit about that toward the end. And of course, if there's discussion, perhaps that will also come up within the questions. So we'll see how that goes, but just so you kind of know what the plans are for this meeting. I would love to introduce you to Stéphane Weil. Stéphane, are you around?
Yes, I am.
I wonder. There we go. So we all see you. Stéphane, you are from an NGO, CATER Com. I think that I'm pronouncing it terribly wrong, but there it is. From Normandy, west of France. Your organization has been working on river connectivity for 20 years, really focused on dam removal. And also you have the migratory fish from the sea to the river and back. So that's really important, and also the ensuring a good ecological status. So dam removal really is important criteria for that. So I'm going to then give the floor to you, Stéphane. We will then, I'll give you a signal when we need to start wrapping up. You can share your screen, and we will hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kerry. Thank you also, Corinne, Foivos and Adela. Nice to meet you all. You present me as an expert of dam removing. I'm mostly an expert of how difficult it is to remove dams at a watershed level. So for this presentation, in the time allowed, I choose to detail some specific case, but mostly to present you how we try to reach that watershed level and what we have to face with to reach and to manage projects of dam removing. So I'm going to start the presentation if it's okay for you. Maybe you'd prefer me to stop the video?
I think let's try with the video.
Let's try like that. You give me a signal.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'll let you know if we start to not hear you so well, then you can switch your video off.
Perfect.
But now try keep with the video and then share as well.
Okay. So as you pronounced it very nicely, Kerry, CATER means in English, Technical Animation Cell for Waters and Rivers. As you said also, we are in Normandy, west of France. And as an NGO, we have active members, such like general councils from the 3 departments we're based in. Fishing and river preservation associations are also members of our NGO, the regional council as well. And we have also associated members, which are water agencies from Normandy and Brittany, both of them. We were created in the beginning of year 2000, and as you said, we are dedicated to water system protections. We have skills for preservation and restoration of rivers and also associated wetlands. We also have skills for limiting erosion and washing out. I'll tell you a few words just to show how a global approach is necessary.
Stéphane, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. Would you like to share your screen? I don't know if you are or you want to share it now, because we don't see the
Okay. So there's a problem. I thought it was shared. I'm gonna try again. Sorry for that.
No worries.
So maybe it's gonna work better like this. You tell me.
It's starting up. Great. Yes. Okay. Yes. That makes sense. Okay. If you can make it bigger.
I'm trying it. Is that okay now?
Yes, we see the first screen, Masterclass on dam removal. That's what we see.
Okay. So I am gonna quickly go through the first slides I was showing you. Normandy, Western France, you said it.
Yes.
An NGO with active members, institutional members, general councils, I told you. Fishing and rivers associations are also included in the NGO, regional council, and associated members, which are water agencies. We were created in beginning of year 2000, and we have skills, as I said, for river preservation. Also, we have skills for limiting erosion and washing out. And the main goal is to look for balanced practice and activities management. Normandy is well known for its cattle activities. It's a very agricultural place. Some people might know the quite famous Mont Saint-Michel, and we have lots of offshore over there. As I told you, we work on 3 departments. That's some bit less than 20,000 square kilometers with less than 1 million inhabitants. And we have 17,000 kilometers of rivers and streams, which are mostly small rivers. The small particularity of the region is we are on 2 different geological places. On the east of the place, we are on calc systems, and on the west, we are on the old ancient Armorican granitic system, which obviously makes a difference from the river system. We have very few streams on the east, when on the west side, on the west place, you have on the waterproof ground, lots of very little streams. They are obviously different. We have calf streams, we have streams, if we could say. As I told you, the proximity of the sea explained that lots of the streams goes directly to the sea, and we have all kind of stream, but mostly small river. The biggest one is about 150 kilometers long. We don't only have places for cattle, we also have open field and big agricultural production. A lot of villages, no very big town. The biggest one is Caen with 200,000 inhabitants, but many small villages which do have an influence on the water and river continuity, as you might know. Obviously, the main cattle, agricultural growing cows, is known for a few famous cheeses. Working on good water system status is obviously, as you might all know, a point for biodiversity, but also obviously for agricultural uses like fishing or boating. Drinkable water in our place, more than 50% of the water comes from the rivers, and I could have shown you how important the quality of rivers is from the shore, where a huge, very important shell growing takes place. How do we do quickly to manage to try to reach the good status of these systems? We systematically try to reach a watershed level. That means we put together, we join different administrative levels like communities. That's the very big point. We never work on one bank or on only one community. That's the point. As in France, the river management is private, so we translate the private management to a community level with a public project owning. Systematically, for these programs, we put in place, there is local animation, local management, and we have the chance for these 20 years to have public money, public financial helps up to 80%. That this 80% public financial help goes as well for the works, for the studies, and also for financing, paying the local animation. After a bit more than 20 years.
Stéphane,
Yes,
sorry
excuse
to
me.
interrupt.
Yes.
I wonder if you should switch your video off for a bit, so we can
Sure.
hear better.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll let you do that. I'm sorry for this, as we are based in a little village, so maybe it's not so good. Is it a bit, does it seem a bit better now?
Yes, it does actually.
Let's hope. Okay. So after 20 years of local work, almost half of these 20,000 stream and rivers kilometers are included in a program right now. That means a bit less per year of 20 million euros. We have 100 people working on the field. And as I told you, almost half of these 20,000 kilometers are included. What do we do? What project owners do on the field system, on the river systems? Mostly they work on vegetation, management of the vegetation with, as you imagine, the purpose of not everything, but on the contrary, to preserve, to let the maximum of diversity between species of vegetation, ages of vegetation, highness of vegetation. That's why we try to convince everybody. Another big deal is for us to protect rivers and small streams that we mainly have against cattle and destroying rivers and also polluting rivers, as we frequently have more cows on the watershed than inhabitants. And as you might know, bacterial pollution pressure of a cow is 7 times as much as a human person. So it's a big deal, not only for pollution, but also for morphological state of the small rivers we have. And we accompany diverse technical solutions. You might know, mostly fences. We didn't find any better solutions than the fences, but it's a big goal to protect these small rivers. Also, we have to deal with hydromorphological damages caused by years and years of intensive agriculture. So you might also know this problem in some places. It's a big deal, it's hard to resolve, and it's very costly, it's very expensive, but we systematically try to resolve this problem. And for a few years, we also, as I told you, take into account erosion and washing out. So we had to leave the river itself and the banks and go further than this. That means modifying agricultural practice, planting hedges, things like that. Also, the wetlands, not only the famous and well-known wetlands, it's just like marsh or things like that, but also what we call ordinary wetlands, very near to the river. These are what we have to protect, as they are very much complex. All these technical help to the project, different tools, such as prioritizing maps to help the programs to go on. Obviously, one big point, big goal of these programs is dealing with ecological continuity. As I told you, lots of villages mean lots of mills, lots of dams, lots of roads, lots of problems with ecological continuity. Kerry, you said we have migratory fish, that's right. We have salmons, we have eels, we have many species you might know. Also less known species, which some of which are known by the European Directive for Habitats and Species. Here you can see a lamprey, crayfish. That one is called sculpin in English, etc. But not only fish, continuity, as you all might know, has also to take into account other species than fish, like otters, or I think this one is called a vole, an aquatic volve. And also, as you might all know, ecological continuity is not only dealing with fish or animal species, but with sediments translation, sediments transport, which dams often blocks upstreams. So obviously, one key point for good estate program is restoring this river continuity, and we systematically integrate them into the programs. Just as a reminding, in France, has been described more, I think something like 100,000 obstacles, and it's really far from the reality. There is much more, obviously, which have not been described, and in Normandy, in our place, we have thousands of them, and on this map you can see the ones that have been described by local authorities. You can notice that mainly the one that has been described around the main streams. The exhaustive, the complete describing would show much more on very small streams. A few words to insist on the fact that systematically we try to diagnose at a watershed level the continuity problems of all obstacles, not only the big ones, which could be a temptation to work on, but we insist very much to also take into account the very small dams, which sometimes are not dams, just culverts, but who also block continuity at a watershed level. For this, to help the project owners, we provide a lot of tools, as I told you. For example, some forms that allows to describe the problems on fish migration, obviously, but also for mammals and other animals. But also, these forms describe the problems for the water system itself, how long the distance is retained by the distance of river is retained by the dam, the highness of the dam. We have to describe this as well. It's not only a question of fish or animals, but also as you might know, a question of morphological, hydrological perturbances. After these diagnoses are done, you have to prioritize. So you can imagine different approaches to prioritize. One temptation would be to treat the first obstacle from the sea. That is quite logical. That's often done. The thing we often do as well is going from downstream to upstream. Another frequent way to prioritize is to treat the mainstream, but we consider it's not sufficient. You have to avoid what I would call the not going out of a highway effect. If you only restore continuity on the mainstream, you cannot leave the highway, you cannot reach the small stream where a lot of things do happen, as you know. You could also try to restore continuity to non-spawning ground if you're interested by this thematic. Also, a good way to prioritize is to choose the dams or the obstacles that are easy to achieve, where the owner is okay, which is not so frequent, unfortunately. Another point would be to treat the ones that are in ruin or that pose an emergency problem, a risk problem. And also you could choose to prioritize your works with the help of regulatory or legal bonds. All the countries do decline European Water Frame Directive in national laws. Obviously, all this prioritizing, we suggest the project owner to do it in consultation with all actors and partners. That has been proved to be very important from the beginning to associated everybody, obviously. Prioritizing and deciding where you're going to work is one thing, but the other thing is to choose what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Obviously, removing for many reasons I won't describe here is mainly preferable to equipment. As you all know, I will quickly summarize it. The equipment present no benefits for habitats mostly, or almost no, and it's often not sufficient for all species. We noticed in France that we made fish ladders for salmon, but not for other species. And even if you think of different species, you will always forget one. Right now, we are mostly trying to equip some bridges for the otters. Well, equipment is not sufficient for everybody. Often, as we made ladders in the past, we forgot one way of the migration. We helped the salmon, for example, to climb the dams, but we forgot that the young one had to go back to the sea. So we forgot that. And the sustainability of ladders is not okay. In our place, we made a diagnosis on 200 fish ladders. That's quite a lot. And we inspected them all, and we noticed with precise descriptions that half of them were not efficient, mainly because lack of maintenance. That means they're forgotten, they go in ruin, they are blocked by trees, or also inappropriate management. That means the owner of the mill, for example, chooses to block the fish ladder, because he wanted to get all the water in his mill, for example. Here you have a few example of these fish ladders, which are not at all fully functional after a few years. So we noticed on our place that up to 70% of the river flows of our rivers is under a dam influence. 70% is very big. I don't know if you have such numbers on your places, but it's a huge impact on the water good estate. 70%, sometimes 80%, but it was a big deal working on this. And obviously for this crucial problem, fish ladder is no solution. The dam solution is the key. The dam removing solution is the key. But it's not sufficient to say this or to consider this. It's not so easy, as I told you, and as you might have noticed. Obviously, there's a big difference between removing a big dam like the Célune barrage I see you had in your primary slide, and it's a big difference between these big dams and small culverts, which are also important, as I told you, concerning the impacts, the cost, the social acceptance. And it's really not an easy task. I'm going to tell you about 3 big principal types of difficulties we consider here, we have to face here with: social difficulties, economical use, and also technical difficulties. The perception studies that we made, we tried to interview people to know what they're feeling about removing dams. And these studies showed that there are a lot of preconceived ideas, and that all users categories are to take in account while these necessary preliminary consultations and informations. You have to deal, you have to explain, you have to work with politics, general public, leisure users, mill owners association, we have a lot around, because expectations and perceptions are different. What we notice that a common reproach that is done to the dam removing project is that you are reproached to prefer fish or biodiversity to people. So it's very important in the assessment to prove that it's not only removing dam is not only a question of salmon nest, for example, but it's also a general, a public interest solution with things like water purification, for example. That's something we had to face with. Even on the Selune we talked before, even the minister, the ecological minister said, oh, we're not going to put so much money for salmons. Removing them, there's a huge key saying why, and it's not only for fish or biodiversity. If you want to move or change or convince opinions. The social acceptation needs to anticipate the changes of landscape and habitats. For example, lodges can be modified when you remove the dam. Obviously, it might be not possible for boating anymore, problems for agriculture. Even fishermen could be unhappy because they were used to catch some kind of species like carps, and when the dam is removed, they'll be trouts, for example. So you have to work with them as well. Very often what we notice is that for the people, a river with dams is considered as mastered and clean, while when you remove the dam, they will say, oh, it's going to be wild and dirty, and people fear that. Also, you have to deal with numerical and historical habits. People, on the Selene was the case as well. They said, oh, if you remove the dam, that's where my kids learn how to swim. So the loss of souvenir memories is something we have to face with. And also, obviously, here in Normandy, it's the case. There are many ancient mills that are renovated as residents, and it can be a reproach as well that we erase the past. So there are possibilities for removing the dam, but preserving the mill. Also, one frequent reproach concerns flood control. Flood control, people would say, if you remove dams, there won't be no possibility anymore for controlling flood. And we often use the full glass of water example, saying that when the dams are there, when they are full, they won't return any flood. Also, we have to, on big dams especially, use modeling studies and give numbers to prove the non-efficiency of dams to control floods. You can also argue with the risk presenting by dam breaking, and you can also remember how better it is to work on causes of floods like hedges, dispersion, or waterproof grounds, or work on risk like non-building houses on the major bed. What we have to face here concerning dam removing projects here in Normandy is also the hydroelectricity question. People will say, if you remove dams, we will lose a possibility of providing sustainable energy. But what we try to argue is to regard the impact cost and through benefits. Not always an easy task as well, as the crawfish value is not easy to estimate. It's very important as well to be able to provide numbers. For example, in our place, we've been able to calculate that the total hydroelectric gain of river slope would be equivalent to 4 big windmills only. Does it worth it really? So numbers, proofs are very useful. Concerning hydroelectricity, question is also, is it a real sustainable energy regarding climate change and flow rates, which are decreasing year after year? Water reserve is also often mentioned concerning dam removing. People would say, or actor or partner would say, if we remove dams, there won't be no more water in the future. So again, the best thing to do is to prove and to have numbers and to have argues against that, like water quality degradation for downstreams concerning temperature or dissolved oxygen, which is easy to measure. Remembering that for quantity of water as well, dams are no good solution. We calculate here that up to 500 liters per day per hectare go in the sky with evaporation. And knowing that warmer summers are coming each year, it's a point as well. Also, as we have big deals in preserving wetlands, we remember our public that wetlands concerning water reserves, they do better and longer. Concerning technical points on removing dams, obviously each case is different and huge differences are to take into account between dams and culverts, for example, concerning cost, impacts, uses, regulations. Sometimes you have different laws, whether you have to face a dam or a culvert, and the tools are obviously different. But what we have to face with is systematically whether the size of the obstacle is. There are impacts, obviously, on the minor and the major riverbed. And this is never easy to anticipate. The best studies, the best modelizing will always leave you some surprise concerning, for example, regressive erosion. Very hard to determine exactly until where the regressive erosion will go after the dam removing. Subsidence, I don't know if it's exactly the right name in English, but this is also something which is very, very hard to know how far it will go when, because of less water pressure on the banks, they will collapse. We have a few examples. We didn't manage to anticipate this well. The question of sediments is always a big key, with the usual question, leaving them or exporting them, knowing that they are sometimes polluted. After a removal of dam, very often invasive species will come first, as they are not far away upstream, so you have to anticipate this as well. Also, one quite tricky point is that removing the dam, we transform the habitats upstream. For example, over a dam, you could find a nice or looking nice little wetland with some specific protected species. If you remove the dam, the wetland will disappear, and even nature protectors or other NGOs would say that it's a bad point. So that's one thing you have to anticipate as well, explaining that, I don't know how to say it, but explaining maybe that not all wetlands do produce a good water estate, but it's a big deal as well. Even sometimes it can conduce you to contradiction between different European directives. We have examples of habitats recorded for water frame directive, which continuity restoration have very much transformed, and it also has to be anticipated. So what we suggest...
Stéphane, sorry to interrupt you. We need to start wrapping up.
Okay. So I don't know, I have maybe 2 or 3 left slides. Would you like me to pad them, or?
If you can just go through them 1 or 2 minutes, then we can.
Yes, that will do. That will do. So what we suggest mostly, when possible, is systematically to give the opportunity for free evolution around the dam that has been removed with land acquisition or other technique. So on our place, something like 350 dams have been removed in the 15 or 20 last years. All kind of dams are obstacles. We've been lucky enough to have financial help up to 100 of the cost of the works and the studies, which is obviously a huge help. And we also use the European or French regulation to convince to manage this, but it's still a big field work for explaining. We give tools to the project owners, such like web maps, where you can find forms describing the project, so people could know how much how much was the cost, which company did the work, or where it's been done. And we propose also indicators for assessing public politics, such like what's the distance where the fish can now go, how many meters of obstacles have been suppressed. So as to conclude, obviously, our conclusion here in Normandy is obviously dam removing is a big deal, is a big stake for good water status. But there's a lot to take into account. There are many people to convince, and many tools are still needed. We have to explain and argue, especially remembering climate change resilient and sustainable uses with dam removing. We have to assess as well for proving public utility that dam removing is not only good for fish, and still our feeling is we try systematically to give it a watershed level dimension and not a punctual dimension. Here we are, Carrie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stéphane. That was really interesting, and also to see that there's lots of the themes that you mentioned in your presentation today. We've seen with other dam removal projects in other countries across Europe. So I hope also the audience have some questions and would like to pick your brain on some things. I know I have a number of questions, but I would like to open to the audience for a little bit of a discussion. If you have perhaps maybe a comment, a question, please feel free now to contribute. Maybe Adela, can you show everybody? Can we see everybody? I see that there's 90 participants, which is fantastic. Really great to see so many people are interested in dam removal, and what Stéphane had to say. So is there anyone from the audience, perhaps maybe somebody that has anything to contribute to initial discussion? So we have Catarina from Portugal. Hi, Catarina.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm not using my regular headset. So Stéphane, thank you very much for your presentation. That was very interesting. I have a few questions. I hope I don't forget all of them, but if I do, I will type them in the chat afterwards. One question concerns, you showed kind of a template to record all the information about each dam. Is that information, is it something that the template, is it something that your organization has developed? Does it contribute to public policy? Does it use information that then is relevant also for public policy in terms of, for example, the Water Framework Directive? That's one question. The second question concerns, well, here in Portugal, a big concern of people when we talk about removing dams is water availability, because people have grown to equate dams with water availability. So if we take out the dams, the water flows and there's no water for them to use. And with increased droughts and problems with water scarcity, do you think that will make it harder in France, or at least in that part of France, to remove dams in the future? And then the other thing concerns the multiple sources of funding. I think you mentioned that your organization has had also access to public funding to remove some of the dams. So there's some appetite from public administration to proceed and to remove dams. This is something that is not happening yet in Portugal. And I wonder if there was, how long has this funding been available for? I mean, is it something recent in France that there's public funding to remove dams, or it's something that has happened for a long time? It's just that there's still a lot of dams to remove, as in Portugal. And I'll stop here, and if I have other questions, I'll put them in the chat. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Katerina. I will try to answer a lot of few interesting questions. I was in Portugal a few weeks ago in the southeast, and obviously I imagine how difficult, how different is the task concerning removal over there. I mean, that's a big point, not only for drinkable water, but also for the olive cultures, and it might not be simple. Concerning your first question with the forms, I showed two kind of forms. One we made with partners is given to the people who will make the diagnosis on the watershed level. So this one is obviously available. It's a help for not to forget anything. It's interesting when it's the same one for everybody, so you can report after. Another form I showed is with the interactive web map, the possibility for each project owner to find a similar project to his. And this form, which is very useful. So as I told you, we have hundreds of forms of obstacle treated, detailed in forms. This one, one of our major public partner for financial help made it an obligation. So it's not very fair, maybe, but if the project owner wants to have his money for his dam removing, he has to fill the form. We created, but he felt okay for using it. So that's this obligation, as I said, is not super fair, but it's a super solution for have it complete and for everybody to be able to enjoy and to have the benefit of the experience. Your last question, yes, well, I don't know exactly how to tell you, but I cannot imagine a huge, massive dam removing in every place in the world. Well, it's not obviously so simple. Here in Normandy, I could have shown you a picture of rain. It was raining a few days ago. We have still a lot of water, but things might change, obviously. And as you mentioned, south of France, and we have to face more and more with this question of dam removing, as I told you, with the contradiction of keeping water to face the climate change. So our point, our aim is to say water in dams is not super water concerning quality and quantity with evaporation. Let's try to keep water in the wetlands because we are lucky to have some, so they have to be restored. So that's the point we're going to try to argue for the water quantity and the dams as reserves. Finally, for your last question, you asked about public funding. Yes, it's been very, very useful, as you imagine, that some of our institutional partners could give up to 100% of the costs to the project owner, because the project owner, which are, how could I say, communities, are not always very fanatic of dam removing, but facing the laws and the European or national regulation, when we could see the dam owner and telling him, you have an opportunity of being, you can have an opportunity of reaching the laws, of being correct with the laws, and to reach this possibility, you can have 100% for your works, which should be obligatory. So that was, I'm not sure I'm super fluent, but that was a huge, huge help, being able to provide 100% of the work. It's finished now because of pressure and lobbying of the mill owners. So we cannot anymore give 100%. It's only, you will say only is already a lot, 80%. But the 20% left is not always easy to motivate the project owners.
So Stéphane, the mill owners, the mills, you're not allowed to remove the mills. Is that the new?
Yes, well, there are also NGOs of mill owners, which are not, they do not represent all the obstacles, especially the small culverts, the big dams. But we have here in Normandy, which is not far from Paris, we have lots of secondary residences, and people are very much attached to their mills. And these dam removing politics have been reproached, I'm sure it's the same in many places, to destroy historical patrimony. And so these mills are not making any energy, just they keep the dam as an agreement. They are often owned by people who are aware of laws and things like that. So they, at a national level, they manage to put pressure on these dam removing politics, and that's one of the reasons why the 100% financial help is not reachable anymore.
That's really interesting. I know that historical things that is definitely an issue in many countries. In terms of dam removal, that there's always a historical element, but then there has been cases where you can remove the barrier within the river system, and then keep the mill on the on the side, so you can still continue the river connectivity with that historical aspect intact. Is that also relevant in your cases too?
Yeah, yes, true. I think I said it, or I should. You mentioned that you could remove the dam, to be very concrete, and leave the mill, obviously. But people are, they like their mills because sometimes you have a swan swimming up there. You can do little things like that. So it's not easy, and we have to deal with this lobbying. So that's one of the reasons why I was trying to insist on being able to argue, to have proofs, even with some real proofs. It's not easy to convince, so we absolutely need to have proofs. And not only, we noticed for the last 20 years that it was a mistake only arguing, assessing with fish, because we have to give and prove public utility, public users benefits of this politic of dam removing.
Yes. Thank you, Stéphane and Katerina, for your great questions. I do say that we did have some questions from the audience. A comment, I think that Celine Hanse, she shared the database, and I think that was the database that you were talking about. If you have any other links, Stéphane, that would be really great if you could share in the chat when you get a chance. I know when we finish with the Q&A, if you can share some links, that would be great. A question, one of the questions are barriers and rivers privately owned in your region, or are they public property? So who should provide the permit for a removal?
It's mostly 90% private property. In France, private property is very powerful, and the banks, the river till the middle of it is private property, and the mills and the dams are very often private property. What is not private property is the roads, the bridges on which it's easier to deal with public authorities, but it's mostly public property. And to manage to remove dams or to restore continuity, we have to go through a public project owner. I don't know how it works in other countries, but we have to convince community or the group of community to get competences and be a project owner, which is not easy because sometimes this question, first of all, ecological or water river restoration is not a big deal, and especially when it concerns not very political acceptable things like dam removing. It's not easy to find the project owner, but you have to find it. So you also can deal directly with the private owner.
Okay. And do you have any issues with dams that have no owner? I know that's an issue in many countries.
Not so many on my, as far as I know, not so many as here in Normandy. It's a place with a lot of people, a lot of, how could I say, the villages are diffused. There are not so many people, but they are everywhere. So you don't have so many abandoned. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. So abandoned, exactly. That there's just there's no one to that people can contact to remove this barrier. So yeah, so that becomes a problem in terms of permitting and from the legal perspective. That you can't just remove a dam, and with the permitting, there needs to be some application to connecting with a responsible person for that dam. Okay. So then the next question is: you mentioned a lot of old mills and barriers attached to them. Are these structures considered historic relics and are protected, or can they be removed in your region? I think that we already touched on that, right? That question of the old mills and the relics. Is there anything else that you could add to that you would like to add to that?
I think, as you said, we already mentioned it. Yes, obviously the mills are not used anymore for weed or for anything, but problem is people, they say it could provide a few electricity, as we have here in France, national politics that made the state buy the private produced electricity, so it still can be interesting for a private person. And also, as I told you, people are interested in keeping mills for historical patrimony, leisures, and it's still a big deal. But I just would like to precise that mills are not the only point, obviously. Right now we work a lot on what we could say small continuity, which is also very important, not only working on it's temptation to work on main rivers, but more and more we go up to very, very upstream and try to work, which sometimes is more easy, with culverts and very small obstacles.
Fantastic. Okay, there's two more questions that we can run through quickly. I see the time is ticking. There was a question about water loss due to evaporation from reservoirs behind dams. And they were asking, are you talking about big dams or also smaller barriers like weirs in terms of the evaporation?
Yeah, we also talk about very small barriers, but obviously if the water retained upstream the dam is very narrow with a lot of trees have been shown here with different studies, scientific studies, as good help for providing evaporation and water heating. But you can notice the evaporation phenomenon, which increase with climate change. Even on small, it's an addition of a problem. We noticed in some places, especially in the upper stream we were talking about before, that after the dam, there was no more water in the river. Some dams or some barriers can evaporate the total flow of small streams. So it's a big deal here in Normandy, especially considering climate change.
Fantastic. And then another one, how big of the problem is the disruption of natural sedimentation in your region? Have you noticed any issues at river deltas or shorelines, like land retraction or salt intrusion? Great question.
Yes, can you, the question was if we notice the lack of sediments due to dams.
Yes, well, actually, the disruption of the natural sedimentation. So the dams holding back the sedimentation. And then they asked, have you noticed any issues at the rivers and at the deltas and the shorelines with regards to all of those, the sedimentation being held back by those dams?
Okay, no, in fact, it's a question well, we are aware of, but we haven't noticed that. We haven't noticing any lack of sediment on the downstream of the rivers. So I think, but maybe some experts could confirm that most marine sediments come from the sea and not so much from the watershed. And the specific power of the streams in our place is not anymore sufficient to move big stones. In fact, we made some marking with some P tags of the stones. We noticed that even after the dam removing, stones and gravels were still in place mostly. So the sediments we have upstream our dams are mostly coming from the agricultural parcels washed by rain.
Okay.
Not sure I explained, I answered well.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would love to explore that question a lot more, but we don't have time for it, so we'll have to leave it at that. For those that want to contact you, would they be able to, if they have questions, other questions, would they be able to contact you, email you? Would you be open for that? If so, please leave your email in the chat. And then, Stéphane, there's also a question in the chat. While I'm just wrapping up, if you could have a look at that question in the chat, that would be fantastic. So I wanted to talk to you about the Dam Removal Europe Help Desk. I'm going to share my screen quickly. We don't have lots of time, so I'm going to run through it really fast. I hope that you can see my presentation. Can somebody help me? Can you see the
Yes.
presentation mode?
Yes,
Help
now
desk.
it's in presentation mode.
Help desk, right? It says help desk. Yes, good. So basically, the help desk is there to support people that are specifically working on dam removal projects. That's Dam Removal Help Desk as a whole. And of course, we are really also very much working with Open Rivers Program. Open Rivers Program, they have a call coming up. It's a philanthropic fund for 42.5 million euros. And we really would love to make optimal use of this funding opportunity from Arcadia. To remove small dams, ones that are easy to remove, that are obsolete, that don't have a lot of controversy, so we can see, we can build a movement of removing barriers and show new cases. And of course, I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, know about this, but just to briefly introduce that, and to tell you guys, this is what the plans are. So if you are planning a dam removal project, there is a call coming up next week. The call opens. It's for full proposals, and on the website they have this the planning for the next year. And so you can see if you're not ready for this call, there's also one in February, in June and October. And please, if you really want to know more about Open Rivers Program, hear it directly from them. They have a webinar on the 7th of November. Register. They only have 100 places. So go and register right now. Even while I'm talking, go and register for that. And then to tell you, if you have questions about Open Rivers Program, we do have support system in place that can help you with that, connect you also with experts If you're struggling with some issues, let them help you. Fivos is around from World Fish Migration Foundation, who is he's working on the help desk. Fivos, do you have anything? Can you add a little bit to this call?
Well, thanks, Carrie. Actually, since we don't have time, I will just be very brief on that. Basically, it's what the name suggests. We're here to help on any issue. So if you have any questions, any requests, or whatever, you can always contact us. And the way to do so is through the Dam Removal Europe website. The email is also in the chat. And just to give you an example, if, for example, you are looking for an expert on sedimentation regarding to barrier removal, then you can reach out to us and we can give you some suggestions, or we can put you in contact directly. Or another example, if you're looking for some reports, some previous case studies, some references on a specific project that you're working on and you need some additional information, we can help you with that as well. So in brief, in any situation that you are in, and if you need some assistance, we're here to provide that. So feel free to share your updates on your projects and ask your questions and requests.
Fantastic, thanks, Fivos. And then also if you are planning a removal, let us know, please. It will be fantastic if we can have an event around your dam removal. And if you have already had a dam removal, also let us know so we can put it on the Dam Removal Europe website so people can see, and we can also contribute that to later reporting. So we wrap it up from there. I think was there anything from the chats relevant to us? But for those of you that have to urgently go, thank you so much for joining us. Keep well until next time. Bye-bye.